Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. I'm Greg, and of course, Jason is here, fresh off of a 5-day run at the racetrack. How you feeling, JP?
Hey, G-Dub. I'm good. I'm great. I'm home, man. Since we went to Atlanta, I hadn't been home since before I left for Atlanta. I came home for a day after COTA, not even a full day. I left to go straight to Chuckwalla. Did some one-on-ones out there, and they had the final round of the CVMA championship out there. So now they're kind of shut down for the summer. But it was a great weekend, fun weekend.
Will you get to still coach and do some things like that, even though they're shut down? Like, will they open it up for you privately?
Yeah, but it's too hot. That's the problem is June, July, August, it's 110 degrees out there plus. So I've got to go out there next week for kind of like a special thing I've got to do next Tuesday. And then we're off to VIR Thursday. So, season's kicking off. These months are going to fly by, I know. But yeah, I do some stuff. I'm going to be going to Blackhawk Farms a couple times this year during the summer. I'm going to go up to the Ridge again up in Washington with Moto Vixens. So that'll be fun. So yeah, I mean, there's still stuff I'm going to do. I'll be at Button Willow in May doing one-on-ones out there. I think I got 3 days with Let's Ride track days out there. So I'm still going to be doing quite a bit of that. Kawasaki also gave me a really cool bike to play around with, just a full kit bike that Michael Gilbert actually raced this year at some of the CVMA rounds. They've loaned that out to me to have a little bit of fun on. So I rode that, but my leg still isn't where it needs to be. It's probably 50 to 60% healed right now. So I might zip up to Dr. Ting's also in the next day or so, have him look at it. Anyways, so yeah, it was Easter weekend, and there wasn't a lot of racing for us this week, Greg. As far as road racing goes, we had pretty full weekends the last couple, but there was American Flat Track Series this weekend, and I know you got the results for us. I did get to watch a little bit of it, but why don't you give us some results?
So Jared Mees gets off the Schneid, the number one plate on the Indian motorcycle. He does it 1.3 seconds margin of victory over Briar Bauman, who was our winner from Daytona, and Brandon Robinson, who was our winner from the second round in Georgia. Halbert was the first of our Harley Davidsons, Old Slam and Sammy in fourth. And there's this old dude named Larry Pete Gravel, or they call him
Don't you
Pegram.
love it? Pegram fifth. How sick is that?
Vanderkoy in sixth. Henry Wiles in seventh. Robert Pearson in eighth. JD Beach on the Yamaha, the first of our Yamahas. He beat Jake Johnson. That was ninth and 10th. Davis Fisher, Jeffrey Carver, Brandon Price, Stevie Bonzi, and PJ Jacobson in 15th. Monaco and Bronson Bauman, 16th and 17th. So normally they take 15, I think, Jay. So there must have been two provisionals in that one. So there you go. Yeah. There's your results. And it was a good race. I saw it. Pegram got off the line, got the whole shot. I was like, oh, look at the old man go.
He's going to love you for this, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to give you an idea what happened at Texas Motor Speedway, that flat track, the fastest lap of the race was actually Bauman at 20.22 seconds. 20 seconds, 0.22.
Yep.
The slowest, best lap of that race was PJ, who had a 20.974. So everyone, at least their fastest lap was in the 20-second range, but it shows you what a difference of your ability to go your fastest lap, only 0.7 of a second off the leader, but at the end of the race, you're 21 seconds back. So it's, so PJ, like Monaco and Bauman, they both were like a lap down.
Mm-hmm.
So PJ was the only one to finish on that lead lap, and that was 21.3. So he must have been right in the frame that I didn't see when Mees came across the line. He must have come across the line like right on the rear wheel of PJ. But it just shows you like the difference, the flat track versus what we do, where it's not a tenth of a second that matters in this, right? It's 100th of a second, maybe 1,000th of a second that matters.
And it's just so competitive. It's so gnarly. And I think there's for sure, Jared getting off the Schneid to come back and defend his championship 3 races in, I think is a good thing for him as far as not that he needs any more confidence. I know that he's a pretty confident guy, but I think Pegram finishing 5th is good. PJ making, I don't even know when the last time PJ dirt tracked. Like at the national level. So for him to make the main event first try is good. And JD getting some points finally. I'm going to try to watch every one of them this year, because this next weekend should be really interesting also, because they're going to run a huge version of a TT track in Arizona. I've actually even thought about ripping over to Chandler to go watch it.
Dude, I would. Super TT.
Yeah.
But before you get any further into that, Jay, I
Yeah.
did get on the phone with Jared Mees, our race winner in the Premier Twins class. I had a conversation with him, JP, and I asked him, well, first I said, congratulations. Then I said, how'd the weekend go?
Thanks, dude. It was good. Actually had like an uneventful trip there. Me, the wife, and Hayden were on our plane on Friday. Supposed to schedule a fly out at like 11:45 a.m. Get there at like 4, and we're all sitting there on the plane, getting ready to take off, and then bing! Oh, there's a problem with the airplane. We got a deboard. Long story short, I get put on a later flight with a big connector in Atlanta, and then weather in Atlanta delayed a bunch of flights getting in. So long story short, I had to fly out of Daytona Beach, which is 2 hours from my house, hour and 45 minutes from my house, Saturday morning. So I had to get up at like 3 a.m., drive to Daytona, fly out. I landed in Dallas at like 10 o'clock in the morning. So I was a little bit tired, and we qualified third, and basically leading all the way up to the semi. I was like always like a tenth off of Robinson, who fast qualified it, and then kind of Breyer was kind of right between us both. And semis came rolling around. We made some adjustments and won the semi. Went out there, and me and Breyer had one hell of a main event. Was able to win the main two. I got off the line pretty good. I think I got off. I think Larry Pegram actually whole shot at it. And
who?
We got by Larry Pegram. Larry Pegram, man, he's taken. He already wrote his post race press release that he got the whole shot, and then I forgot to put my contacts in, and I couldn't see. And no, anyway, he rode really good. He ended up getting fifth. And so anyway, we got off the line, and both Breyer and I got past Larry on basically coming off of turn 2, and took me a few laps. I got by Breyer, then he got back by me, and then I got him again. And the second time when I got him, I kind of corrected the line that I was taking in 3 and 4, which allowed him to pass me the second time there. I corrected that, and then pulled actually a little bit of a gap. I mean, I wouldn't say I pulled way out on him, but I was able to have a little bit of breathing room, put it that way, towards the end. So it felt good. I mean, I haven't. Somebody said, "Oh man, you were on like a 7-race dry streak from counting last year to this year." And last year I think we went the last 4 races, and I didn't win anything. So for me, it was good to win again for sure. It's been a long time.
You ever had a situation like that, Jay, where like you miss flights and all of a sudden you show up like and have to qualify like Gobert style?
No, never had anything like that, in the sense that I can't imagine to be that close to maybe even missing the night. It was really funny how he tells the story there, because he kind of just blew past it after he landed and everything, but it would have been probably pretty stressful, even getting up at 3 a.m. He probably didn't sleep at all, doesn't want to miss his wake up, and gets there. I think it's really funny when he talks about a dry streak too, that other people were mentioning. That kind of shows how good he really is, that when other people are like, hey, Jared, you haven't won in 7 races dating back to last year. That's like GOAT type status, where people start really thinking of you as a guy that you should be winning probably 1 out of every 2 of your starts. So to be 7 races gone. So great for him, especially under the circumstances. And I love his jabs at Larry, because Larry loves to jab all of us and have a good time. And the fact that he got the whole shot is good, and meaning Larry. But yeah, contacts and all the other stuff Larry has. But guys is obviously still competitive, but great for Jared Mees.
Well, that's the thing about flat track that I think is unique in motorcycle racing, period, is we know that motocross, supercross is a young man's sport.
Mm-hmm.
You hear, oh my God, Chad Reed, 37 years old. He's the grandfather of the sport. In road racing, you can carry that on a little bit further. Obviously, Valentino Rossi, his age, Josh Hayes, his age, and so on. But flat track seems to be that sport, not because of injuries, because people definitely get hurt, but more because of experience. I think in flat track hill climate matters too, but in flat track, I think it matters more than anything, the experience you have, because we've heard Jared Mees say on this podcast before, you go from track to track to track to track, and there isn't one that's similar to the other. So you've got to understand what it's doing at 2:00 in the afternoon versus what the dirt's going to be doing at 8:00 or 7:00 at night, or 9:00, whenever the main event is. And I think that's very interesting. And it also lends itself to a racer like Larry Pegram, who might be missing a step on the road race side. Don't let Larry hear me say that, but if he is, because it happens occasionally with age in road racing, is you don't necessarily get that big of a fall off in flat track. You think that's kind of fair to say?
Yes and no. I think flat track is pretty physical. I mean, going the same direction, I know it doesn't sound very hard to most people, but like you say, the changing of the conditions when the moisture gets in the track and setups. And I think that one of the most interesting things that Jared said in our podcast a few weeks ago was, I think you got it out of him, Greg, where you were talking about he's going to 18 different venues and 18 different venues of dirt that he had to learn, and setting up a bike. You heard him say he even made a small change after the semi, or after qualifying there before the semi. And I think that talking to Corey Alexander, even, he says, Jay, because I've never changed a bike as much as I've changed a bike. So what I would base off Larry's success is that, number one, he's been doing this for a long time, but number two, he's probably pretty good at keeping up with the changes on the bike itself. Like if you look at even like what PJ's done, making the main event, but the track might have gone off a little bit different than it was in the main event than it was in the semi that I watched PJ kind of battle his way back through the field. So, I mean, road racing now to me isn't as physical as it used to be because the aid of electronics and some of the things. And I think Larry could get on a bike right now, a road race bike, and still rip. Josh Hayes could still do the same. Obviously, we know that. But I think dirt track's pretty physical, because the other thing, Greg, is that there's nothing in between these riders. Everyone, the competition's so close. Everybody's just in a train pretty much. So I think it makes it even more exhausting.
And to add to the fact that if you miss, though, and we talked about at the beginning of this thing, if you're a 10th off in your setup, you're out the back. You've got to be there. And that's why it's so great to watch great racing in flat track. And it's good to watch the road racers jumping across, PJ 100%. And making it, and JD Beach making it. So it shows you that as long as you have those roots and you have the talent, that you can take it across multiple platforms. I'd love for someone to go ahead and give it a go. Well, it's been tried, I think, a couple of times, where someone races, GNCC, a flat track, a road race, maybe a hill climb. A motocross race is a bit too much to ask. I mean, there's only one guy that we know of that's been in the middle of a road race career that's actually qualified for a motocross race, and that's, of course, Jake Gagne. So, that'd be asking a lot. And if he ever healed up, he'd probably be a good candidate because he motos and everything else to possibly do something like that. But anyway, so the thing is, we started MotoAmerica with back-to-back weekends, but it's nothing compared to what's in store for Mees and American Flat Track.
Man, we have the busiest time for us is here now. With Texas last weekend, we have like 7 straight weekends in a row we're racing back to back to back to back. So basically until the middle of June, we're every weekend. We're busy. This coming week when we're at the Arizona Super TT. The reason why they're calling it a Super TT is because I believe it's got like 3 jumps in it and 2 right-handers. So usually we're used to like 1 jump, maybe 1 right-hander. So it's going to be pretty cool from what I'm hearing. The American Flat Track has a weekend off, but I'm not taking off. I'm going to race in Willow Springs, California, the big Eddie Mulder Digger Helm shootout there. And then we come back for Paris, California, Sacramento, California, Springfield Mile, and then the Kentucky Red Mile. So we got some time, some heavy race time coming up for sure.
That's a brutal schedule. Even if you're NASCAR, right?
Yeah, but doesn't it kind of? The first thing I thought about when he said that was, I know he's coming out to Willow to do that event that's not really part of the AFT. But kind of makes you respect Supercross even more, because I know dirt trackers, they're training off the bike as well, but man, Supercross guys go basically 16 weeks. They just took their first weekend off last weekend, I believe. And they go 16 weekends straight every Saturday all over the country. And the thing is that during the week, they're on a bike all the time as well, or at least 2 days they're on a bike. So I know they travel usually on Sunday night or Monday, probably have a day off, and then they get on a bike for 2 days before they have to ship back off to somewhere else. But that's a pretty grueling schedule that Jared's got to keep up. And I think it's great that they're coming out my way, because I'd like to go to this Arizona thing. I don't think I can go this weekend, but I'd like to go to Paris, or I've always wanted to go to Sacramento Mile. So have to go check one of these races out. So, great that Jared's on the show. Wish him nothing but the best. Also, real quick, in the singles class, it was cool to see Shayna Texter take her first win of the year as well for KTM. I saw Chris on the Fans' Choice, and I know KTM's put some effort into that this year. So awesome to see her get her first win of the year. It's good.
Yeah, but also James Rispoli finished 7th in that one. That was a good result for the road racer, the flat tracker turned road racer turned flat tracker. So that was a good one for him. So
he's got the itch so bad too. He wants to be road racing. He wants to be part of the MotoAmerica Championship so bad right now. And it's just a matter of being able to find a ride or whatever it is. But he's just kind of on the grind, just kind of staying active. He's enjoying doing the AFT. He's one of the few guys out there on a Cowie. I think he was the only Cowie that made the main. But that racing is just so competitive and so good. And
margin of victory was what, a tenth of a second, and then there was another tenth back to James Ott, which was crazy. And Shayna's times, by the way, would have put her, like, her best lap time was a 20.8. So that's competitive with the twins class. And Mikey Rush did a 20.7. The fastest lap was Ott, who finished third at a 20.6.
And how about it was his first ever race.
Unreal, right?
In AFT. So, I mean, in the singles class, it was his first ever race, and he was coming. Like, he was going through guys, and so that series is fun to watch. And I think I'm for sure going to be watching the race this weekend. If I can't get to Chandler, I'm definitely going to be watching it.
Well, I can't wait to watch it either. All right, Jay. Well, it's been about 4 weeks since Supercross star Chad Reed crashed and busted himself all up. It was the Seattle Supercross. Reed broke his scapula, 8 rib fractures, and a collapsed lung. So, I wanted to catch up with him, see what was going on. So we chatted yesterday, and the first thing that I said to Chad Reed, Jay, was, "It's been too long, buddy. First off, how are you doing?"
Yeah, it's been too long. I prefer to catch up every week. That means everything's going smooth. But everything's going all right. Like, honestly, my shoulder has taken the longest, and it's taken longer than I expected. I'm working on a kind of like a second opinion and trying to figure out. I re-injured a shoulder that I'd already had some surgery on. So my doctor and the guy who did my surgery has been on leave. So he's been a little bit challenging to get a hold of. So working on that, just because I would really like his opinion, obviously knowing that he's already been inside there and seen it, and kind of knowing what he did, and then seeing what's different and what's changed. I guess I'm in a little bit more pain, and like it's not coming around as quickly as I expected. So it kind of just makes me a little bit worried that something else is going in there that we're missing, just because I've had this injury before, and truthfully I've been able to race the next weekend with it. So, the fact that I'm 4 weeks after and I'm still in quite a bit of pain and just not really got the strength and range of motion and all that kind of stuff that I expected. So working on that. Other than that, ribs, typical. I've broken, I think, at most maybe 2 before, but having 8 has been a lot of fun. Not being able to cough, laugh, sneeze, and do any drastic, crazy movements. So they haven't been too painful, to be honest with you. Like, they hurt every once in a while, and things that you do, but I expect that from those. I feel like ribs are they're annoying until they're not, and then you don't even realize that you even had an injury. So I continue to work on that and try to figure that out, but there's not a lot you can do for that. So yeah, I guess long and short of the story is my shoulder's the one holding me back. I feel like, I feel like if it wasn't, it probably wouldn't be amazingly comfortable to jump on a dirt bike and ride with my ribs, but I feel like I could if I had to. But my shoulders were not there yet. I wouldn't, I'm not ready to jump on a bike yet.
You've been through it. I don't know. I mean, dude, have you ever had 8 cracked ribs before? I've had.
Oh man, I'll tell you right now, like road racing I've torn the cartilage away from my rib cage a bunch, and yeah, I've broke ribs as well. But road racing is pretty hard on that because especially the strain of like pulling yourself forward, from one side to the next, the speed in which you have to get your body from one side to the next because of how fast the bike is going is a different type of pull. I don't know with Supercross. Yeah, the speeds are slower, but pounding through whoops or rhythm sections or anything like that with broken ribs has got to be the most brutal thing ever.
I wish I could comment on it, but I have to imagine, like you stand up, you sit down, all those motions, how much core you're actually using. When you're bracing yourself for impacts and those types of things, it'd be brutal.
Yeah, the thing you said too, Greg, that I find is all these guys are athletes. We all know our bodies. We get injured and we kind of know where we're at with our injuries. And somebody like Chad has probably had numerous people telling him, oh, you're getting older and, don't heal as quick because, he feels a little something different in his shoulder than he had in the past. Like you heard him say, I think I've ridden with something like this in the past. I don't know if I could ride with this one. And he wants to get a second opinion. It has nothing to do with age. Okay. Like when even with my injury, people are like, oh, Jay, you don't heal as quick. I'm so far ahead of schedule of how I'm healing right now. And I can ride a motorcycle. But Chad, to go get a second opinion, it's because he feels something in his body that he's never felt, or maybe it's not quite healing as quickly as it can. And the guy's healthy. So, the scapula part, that's not too bad actually, but the rib fractures and, and the shoulder, obviously he feels something a little bit different in there, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm. He does. The funny thing with Chad and the talk around, as soon as he crashed and got that hurt, everybody was like, oh, that's it. I know he said he wanted to come back to racing, but I don't think he's going to do it. And, blah, blah. Everybody, wants to put words in his mouth. So, I had to be responsible as a journalist. I say that tongue in cheek because I'm no journalist, but I did ask him about the future. And the question I asked Jay was, has the injury changed his mind about wanting to come back and continue on with racing?
And not at all. Unfortunately, it's gone the opposite way. Well, I guess fortunately for me, I think unfortunately would be kind of a little bit unexpected on my behalf because, racing's something that I love to do. But probably the biggest positive that I'm going to take from, and maybe I needed to see that, maybe at the end of the day, there's light at the end of the tunnel of, when you're immersed in the grind and, weekend after weekend, there's a reason why I love doing what I do and why I work and why I still believe that I can win and challenge for title because, like my feeling is, my performances haven't been that great and that's just my personal judgment, not anything else. And I just think that, when I've had track position, I feel like I've been able to ride well, being able to be in position. But for the most part, like I just haven't been totally stoked on my full complete execution of a weekend, and I probably have that stronger belief of that now after being able to go and watch the last 2 weekends. I just don't see anything that can't be done, like everybody questions and says, oh, like you're doing awesome, you're doing great, you're 37, and it's like they kind of give you the consolation prize, but like that's not why I'm here. Like I really honestly believe that Supercross at the highest level is done a particular way, and I feel that I can still do it that way. So that's what keeps me coming back, and watching the last 2 weekends has been painful. I feel like we're at the point of the season where the grind starts taking effect. Unfortunately, the racetracks, like the whoops and the tracks themselves, have probably been the best since I've been hurt. So it's been painful to go and watch the new generation ride around, and I think that watching and seeing what I've been able to witness makes me and gives me more belief and stronger belief in what I really believe to be true, and that's that I can still be competitive. So I think track position is super, super important, and I believe that that's the case in all sports now. Like I think the world we live in, it's all about making it even, making it fair, narrowing the gap. And I think that whether it be Formula One, MotoGP, or motocross, that gap is definitely smaller. So every little bit of, performance gain or qualifying 18th and getting a bad start, you pay massive prices for that. So yeah, I feel good about my decision to continue racing and wanting to be out there, because I still believe that with the right training, the right bike setup, and everything like that, that I can still be competitive.
I mean, Jason, he brings up a really good point. That's a lot of what we talk about when we commentate. Look at the Wally Junior Cup class in MotoAmerica. It's all about adjusting the rules to make it fair, so everyone has an even playing field. Or we talk about World Superbike and the big ruckus that Alvaro Bautista has caused with the new Ducati, and everybody now up in arms because they want to make it fair. And people saying World Superbike is like a real problem on their hands because they don't have an even playing field. But when did that change? I mean, when did it become all about the rider and not about the team around them, about someone like Ducati who builds a better bike, or someone like back in the day Yoshimura who could build a supreme motorcycle, or Vance and Hines, or Muzzy.
Yeah.
It seems like there's been this fundamental shift in racing that says, okay, everybody has to be fair, every piece of equipment has to be the same, and then we just let everybody go out and race. And I think, wow, like when I was listening to that, I was just like, it's a very good point.
Well, you kind of wonder too if we wouldn't have had the economic downturn that we had 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, especially in the motorcycle industry, where everything would have gone. Because back when there was tons and tons of motorcycles selling, there wasn't as big of a, I don't know if you could call it cost concern, but there just definitely didn't seem like there was as big of one. And I think that when that happened, Greg, when the economy fell at the bottom and people still wanted to try to go racing, they were trying to figure out a way to make it to where people could afford it but keep the racing somewhat close. And you and I have talked about it on the podcast for a lot, all year about Bautista. I've never been the one that wants to penalize Ducati for building a great bike, but Ducati built a motorcycle based on the rules. That's what they did. They just based it on the rules. And then they got Bautista, who's riding great. And I think Chad kind of touches on some of that stuff a little bit there. You heard him talking about his age, which is something that I brought up just now, that because you're a certain age doesn't take your desire away, like from wanting to compete. And I keep bringing him up, but I think Josh Hayes has gone through that a little bit, because in Josh's mind, he's still a racer. He still wants to ride. Obviously, just went and did the Daytona 200. And people try to retire you. You know what I mean, Greg? Like they try to retire you, like, oh, you're getting older. But now in this day and age we know way more about our bodies than we did 10, 20, 30 years ago. The equipment now in our sport, specifically road racing, much easier to ride, regardless of what anybody will ever tell you. The equipment now is so much easier to ride than it was back in the day. And right now, if you still have desire, I get frustrated when people try to retire somebody because they still have the desire to go out and do it. The biggest bummer for Chad, I think, is like when he falls. Like I don't see him falling often, but when he does, this was a big crash. This was like, you don't see guys getting this gnarled up that often. I mean, I know it happens in Supercross, and it probably happens to some of the lesser known guys that we don't know. But I remember Roxon, obviously, and Cole Seeley last year and stuff. But this was a lot of injuries for Chad. And if he still feels like he can come back and compete and has the knowledge of how to win a championship and stuff, why would anybody not want to see Chad in the series?
Agreed. 100%. Well, Jay, you kind of touched on the road race stuff, and that's the other reason I called Chad, right? Was to talk about MotoGP. He's a huge fan. He's good friends with Rossi, Marquez, Jack Miller, along with some others. And he did go to Coda. You and I didn't get to see him because we were working, but
yep.
And with Marquez's early exit from the race, and Rossi with a chance to win, but Suzuki's Rins getting it done, I asked Chad, like, what is your assessment of the weekend and Mark giving one away?
So I'm that into it, and I enjoy MotoGP so much. So I watch, and I guess being an athlete myself, you can always learn by watching, and and the words and the cryptic crap that you carry on with as an athlete, you can read between the lines very, very simply, I think. So right from press conference on Thursday, Mark seems reserved to want to claim and own Coda, in my opinion. And, all things led that he was fine and he was good and qualified on pole. His FP4 performance was insanely strong and unbelievable, like a 2-second gap over everybody. And it really took everybody up until the last closing laps to even close into within 2 seconds. So like for me, all things led to Mark being strong and being able to get it done. But there was something missing from Mark's belief, or whether it be pressure, whether it be his own expectations, or just something, in my opinion, watching on Thursday. And I just think that possibly spilled over into the race. Because, I think what's really challenging from an athletic standpoint and a racer standpoint is to control when you're so strong. Because it's actually the most challenging part of an athlete's career, in my opinion, is when you're actually that good and that strong, that you're too strong and too good, that it all becomes quite easy, because you start to find your holes and your flaws, I think. And watching Mark, he was riding away quite simply and just lost the front, an unexpected loss, because he barely even got an elbow down to try to save it, but when you see Cal pretty much did the same thing, and so it's like maybe it was a Honda issue, I'm not sure. But yeah, more than anything, I was surprised on Mark's mistake than I was on the rest of it. And I think that if I'm just giving my opinion, I think more than anything, Mark threw one away, and then Valentino failed to capitalize on a weekend that he needed to really capitalize. Not too often you get handed, victories on a weekend on one of your, weakest tracks, one of your tracks that are really challenging, and, a track that Mark's so strong at, and then you pretty much get handed, a pretty good solid gift. And unfortunately, he didn't have the tires to take advantage of it. But, for somebody who's a part of the Suzuki family, it was pretty damn cool to see somebody so young, a company that's worked really, really hard, and they've fought their way to the front. And I think that was really cool and unique to see.
A couple things to unpack here, Jason. First and foremost is his Marquez comments. Before you give us some BS line about, I've never been in the position where I've been dominant, you're lying. Okay. Before you even open your mouth, I can tell you're lying, because I was there racing in 1997 and I saw it. You know what I mean? And it would have continued in 1998 had Nicky Hayden not showed up and become your teammate. But nonetheless, you were crazy dominant, during that time period. It was like there was nothing that you could do wrong. Yeah, you didn't dominate every single session. I understand that. There were a couple times when your suspension guy, Carl, went out there like right before the race and would be like, I'll change a couple things and blammo. But I still think that there's an element of what's going on with Marc Marquez that you can relate to. Call me a liar.
Well, no, I think what's really weird, because as a racer, you want to win and you envision yourself winning. When you put your head down on the pillow, even during the whole off season, you've got visions of what it is you want to accomplish. It's very easy to lose track of, studying too much on the prize instead of really studying what you need to do to get there. But when you get there and then you're expected to win every week, and then you kind of, like, the guy's won 6 times at Coda. I really simply feel that he made a mistake. Maybe I didn't get to see some of the things Chad did, only because I didn't go to the press conference. I wasn't there. We were driving. And then during FP4, we were working. So I didn't really get to look at FP4 that much. So Chad got to study those things, and he's looking at it from the side of an athlete, which I 1,000% full respect on that. I look at what Marquez did as he just made a mistake. It's very, very difficult in that kind of first gear corner to save it with your knee. Like, it would have been, you kind of tell he tried to, but Greg, at the end of those straights, it's first gear, it's super slow. What has it got to be, 30 mile an hour maybe at the apex of that turn?
That's what it feels like. Sure. Yeah.
coming from full speed. And if you can see, he was a bit late turning in. He never was even going to get close to the apex, and he was trying to get the bike slowed to get it there. I just chalk it up as a mistake. Crutchlow, I mean, okay, they're both on Hondas, and I get it, but Cal's got way too much of a history of doing this in the past for me to sit there and try to say that Mark did the same thing that Cal did and blame it on a bike. But, you know, they're always talking about the front ends on the Honda being a certain way. But when the pressure is on you to win and because everybody expects it, there could be a little sign of complacency in the middle of, you know, the guy's got +4 on his board. What was he, like 7-8 laps into it, Greg? 9 laps at +4?
Yeah, something like that. Ridiculous.
It's easy to get into those corners at the end of those straightaways a little bit too deep too. And we said it all weekend on the broadcast that's why it's so technical. That's why it makes Dakota so hard, because they're not used to doing that lap after lap into first gear corners. But I feel like it was just a mistake. What he does say about Rossi also not winning, that was really the time when I would have thought Rossi would have looked at it and thought to himself, you know, now's my chance to get these 25 points in the bank. Richie Alexander said something really interesting to me Sunday night after the race. And he said, it would have been interesting to see if 10 years ago, if Rossi wouldn't have won that race, you know? But we can't take anything away from Rins, can we? I mean, the kid just rode amazing, and we've all been saying he's on the cards for a victory. So it's just hard. I think on the flip side of it, Valentino also thought to himself, to get those 25 points, he was running out of front grip. He's already seen his main title, like you would say, contender, go down the road. Those 20 points are looking really good right now. Had he tried to win and pushed and crashed, we'd all be sitting here thinking, like, what was Rossi thinking? He could have finished second and got 20 points, right? So that they're all very, very good analysis on what we saw, but I think it was a mistake by Marquez, an incredible ride by Rins, and a smart 20 points in the bank from Rossi is kind of how I feel like the weekend went.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. And, you know, after all that he said, I asked him about his thoughts as it relates to the championship.
I find it hard to believe. Like, it's not like Mark gets gun shy now, and, you know, even if he does back it down, it seems like I actually, more than anything, I'm more afraid for him for what's happening in HRC. You know, chains coming off. I haven't seen a public announcement on what happened to Jorge's bike in the main event. I mean, you know, call it main event, but in the race. But from all things considered, it sounds like it wasn't a chain and likely a transmission or something like that, because it wasn't like you've seen a whole lot of smoke or anything like an engine going, you know. So strange to me. Like when you think HRC, especially on MotoGP, they're unbelievably strong and never having any failures and things like that. So yeah, strange weekend. I probably would say that I'm more concerned for Mark that Honda figures out their weaknesses that they had the last couple of weeks. You know, Mark had a chain come off in Argentina, and Jorge had one come off in Coda. And when you think about the chain talk and the place, I didn't see Mark. I actually missed Mark's come off. I saw the highlight, but I actually don't really remember where it happened or how it happened. But Jorge's, it wasn't like Jorge was under crazy, you know, I mean, for sure there's chain talk right there, but nothing too crazy to think the chain would come off right there, you know, exiting, you know, the last turn going up the hill there. So yeah, I probably am more worried about for Mark on the HRC side, but you got to think that those guys get that situation, you know, under control quickly. And I just think that it's the Mark show until proven otherwise, you know.
What I thought was interesting, Jason, was after talking with Chad yesterday, that line of thinking has started to pop up in the European press today. I saw a couple articles.
But he's 100% right. Because, Greg, I heard the same thing about Lorenzo's. It wasn't a chain the second time. Maybe we saw the same thing, but meaning Chad and I, because we're not used to seeing Honda have like real issues at all. And I love it because I feel the same way. I think everybody just gets a little bit too revved up over the fact that oh, you know, Mark got all this pressure now. Mark Marquez is the guy to win the championship right now. What is he, 9 points back after?
Well, 9 points back, and also Jason,
nothing.
he has more points right now than he did this time in the season last year.
Correct. And he's kind of like has done what Cameron Bobier's done in our MotoAmerica Championship, where Cameron's probably left Texas without a win, but feeling like, wow, I've got so many more points than I had after 2 rounds last year than I do this year. And Marquez ain't worried. It was a mistake. And we've talked so much about how many mistakes the guy makes in practice sessions, and he hasn't made any crucial big errors in races. In fact, I'd have to rack my brain, but I can't think of the last time Marquez crashed in a race. I know it happened probably last year or the year prior, but man, there was a time when that was happening a fair bit, and then he'd go on these 5 and 6 race win streaks. So yeah, I agree with Chad 1,000%. Championship is still going through the Repsol Honda de Garage, but they do have to get over some of the problems and some of the issues that they're having. It was really odd to see chains coming off and like Lorenzo's bike breaking in the second round and stuff. So that would definitely be a little bit concerning for sure.
Mm-hmm. And he did want to add something about what he saw in Alex Rins.
But I will add that I think it's fun to see Rins so strong, like I think that like when you think about, when you really think about what was happening and what's going through somebody so young and racing more than likely one of your heroes in Valentino, he just controlled the race so strongly, like for a guy that was going for his first ever MotoGP, he just looked effortless and looked flawless in my opinion, and I think that if we can see, if we can see that guy gain confidence from one win and he can carry that over, I think he's really the only one currently that I see that can take it to Mark, like he seems to have, he has a little bit extra than what I've seen out of everybody else.
It seems like Rins has just gotten more consistent and gotten so used to being up in that top 5 battle. And I agree again, because he doesn't look scared. And you know what, Greg, they always say the hardest thing to do is to repeat a victory. I think the hardest thing in MotoGP right now is to win your first one, because you've got so many marquee guys that are such studs that it's very hard to win.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
And you take Marquez out of the equation here. I'm not going to say he won that race easy. Obviously, he was pushed by Valentino the whole time, but those 2 guys made everybody else look ordinary. I mean, I got to give a shout out to Jack Miller finishing 3rd. He rode incredible as well, but I think, tires went off and all those kind of things. But Rins does seem like he could be the guy. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes in racing, in the races. He could be the guy that could just keep gathering points the whole time. And like I said, I didn't want to take anything away from him because Mark tipped off. There's no way he would have caught Mark unless Mark had like some insane tire issues at the end of that race, but Mark knows how to manage that pretty well. Like I said, it was a mistake from Marquez, but that's what you got to do to take advantage of it, and Rins did it.
Yeah, when you talked about Jack Miller, I didn't add this little bit that Chad and I spoke about with Jack Miller. One of the things that Chad said about Jack that he was really impressed with is when Marquez crashed out, and now all of a sudden Jack Miller's close enough where he can see the win, that he didn't fall for it. He did make a little bit of a push and he closed the gap, but then he kind of realized, I just don't have the bike or the tire combination to go get that win, where a lot of guys, especially in Miller's case, who hadn't been on the podium in a while and could taste a win, hadn't won, since 16, I guess, right? They won that in 16. Yeah. That he said it was as a racer, and as you and Chad are the same, type of racers, you've been there, to not go for that and not bite on that carrot and then fall down, to actually bring it home in 3rd place and understand what you had and be that 3rd best. That, like you're saying, it kind of made everybody else look pedestrian, made everybody else look normal in that particular race. And he even had Dovizioso breathing down his neck towards the end. And I thought he did a good job of bringing that home, because he easily, as anyone could have, gone the other direction. And said, oh, there it is. It's just a couple seconds up the road. Let me go. I'm going to push. And then boom, down you go.
And let's not forget, too, there's an internal battle there between, again, like there was last year, between him and Petrucci. I think a lot of people thought Miller should have had that ride. And, it probably means a great deal to Jack to be the main Ducati guy, to beat Dovi, not just to like finish behind Dovi, but beat Petrucci, but to beat both of them. definitely puts a lot of cards in his hands. And I think that that's something that we'll see flip-flop throughout the year. I think that we'll go to some tracks that Petrucci will be really happy with if it rains or any of that, but we know Jack's great in the rain as well. But there's like an internal battle between those two guys, even since they were teammates last year. So the fact that Jack put it on the podium so early in the season and did a great job doing so, I think is plays well into his hands. Greg, I'm looking forward to the next round. Next round's, I think it's Jerez, is it not? The next one?
Yeah, back to Europe. Yep.
Yep, next one's Jerez. So we'll I saw a couple posts from our guy Bradley Smith, who's been on the show with us. He was doing some testing there with Aprilia. So no, I think it's going to be interesting as they move forward. This last weekend too, G-Dub, we had BSB. We had British Superbike Championship, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it only because there's so much hype behind BSB. When you look at the guys in the championship and when you look at who is there, it is a bit of a who's who. They got a lot of really solid riders. First race was pretty intense battle between Taron McKenzie and his teammate O'Halloran. Jason's gone from Honda to Yamaha this year, and the Yamahas, well, they were pretty dominant. They were kind of out front, and they ended up getting together with 2 corners to go.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you saw the video, but if you get a chance to go look at the video, it's you can find it on Facebook and all those other places. But Taron just kind of 2 corners to go. Jason had a line. Taron tries to cut up underneath him and touches O'Halloran, and O'Halloran crashes. So a lot of controversy. They ended up penalizing McKenzie and giving Josh Elliott the win in the first round. It was Elliott, McKenzie, Scott Redding on the Ducati, then Luke Mossey, Tommy Bridewell, Andrew Irwin on a Honda. Yep. Stapleford on the build-based Suzuki, which I'll get to that in a second. Claudio Corti, good to see him back. He was on the WD-40 Kawasaki. Danny Buchan and Xavi Flores, top 10. The reason I say that it's interesting to see Luke Stapleford so far up is I would have expected Bradley Ray to be more of a threat on the Suzuki, and he was nowhere to be seen in 16th. Maybe he had some issues. I think the thing about BSB that intrigues me is there's always new guys that just pop up. So you look at like a Josh Elliott winning and that kind of thing. Andrew Irwin on the Honda. You got Xavi Flores and Andrew Irwin, both on Hondas up in the front. Interesting weekend, just looking back at it, and definitely different than what I would have expected the points to be leaving there. Race 2, not to ramble, but race 2, McKenzie did come back and win that one with Elliott second this time and Danny Buchan third. Bridewell, Stapleford again. A really solid weekend for Luke Stapleford. And then Mossey, Irwin, and Flores were 7th and 8th on the Hondas, and they're only 7.3 back. And then you had Dan Linfoot on his new Yamaha ride, and then Ray ended up 10th in that one. So a couple non-finishers. Redding didn't finish. Josh Brooks didn't finish either race on the Paul Bird Ducatis. So a little bit more of a tough go, I think, for the Ducatis. First round out for those guys, they'll sort it out. But the Ducatis didn't come out and whip everybody like I think some people thought.
What I don't understand, Jason, is Scott Redding's a MotoGP guy, and he comes to BSB, and why doesn't he just mop up like Bautista? Blah, 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 blah. MotoGP riders better than World Superbike riders. Blah, 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 blah.
This is great. See, now you're opening it up. So now you're gonna get so much on that. I love it. But Greg, I'm 1,000% in your corner. So far, it seems like there's one guy that's been able to handle this Ducati and make it his. And we can't really talk about, I don't really think it's fair of us to talk about his Ducati because I think Bautista's Ducati is significantly different than everybody else's. And because in BSB form, it's going to be quite a bit different because from the electronic side and what they're allowed to do with the bikes in BSB. In our form, we got Kyle Wyman, that bike is so fresh to him that you can't really, and you just got to laugh at people that think Kyle should be smoking everybody right now.
And it's stock. GP1.com did a little interview with Kyle about it. And I mean, he's just like even they were saying it's stock. It's nothing like
it's bone stock.
It's bone, you have, okay, great. They got a couple race parts on it and they don't have the, I'm I'm debating whether I'm going to tell a secret or not. I'm not going to.
Nope, don't tell secrets.
But let's just say that the Magneti Marelli electronics for Kyle
Yeah.
are on the way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, we know that. And he's come out and said that, which is great. I think you just can't, people just, like, what Bautista's done has just been insanely good. I don't see he's testing in Imola right now, which if you saw Twitter today, I had to laugh because Alex Lowe's basically said something. He tweeted back like, yeah, something about that they've had a real struggle so far. Good thing he's seeing the racetrack, because he's never been to Imola before.
Well,
right?
Actually, I was going to ask you that in the quick shift segment, but I'll blow that off. But and that was like, what do you? The question I was going to ask you in quick shift about that exact topic is, what do you think about the effort Ducati's putting into the effort? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's really incredible. And while we were at MotoGP, I had an interview with Paolo Ciabatti about the effort that Ducati Corsa is going to put into, if any, United States and to Kyle Wyman. And the answer that I got was really surprising. It'll be on that Inside MotoAmerica show on NBCSN. I'm going to do a little feature with them about that. But basically what he said was like, yeah, listen, Ducati Corsa is very interested in helping him develop that bike. They're the ones sending them the electronics. They're going to give him base maps. There's all kinds of information. He doesn't get free stuff yet, and to Kyle's credit, he's not asking for free stuff. He's just saying, oh, okay, you're going to help me. That's great. And I think knowing Ducati the way I know Ducati, after all these years of being around it, I think it's the right way to go. You don't call up Ducati and say, hey, I'm going to buy one bike. Can I get something for free? It's more Kyle just like keeping his head down, running his program, letting them extend. And I know Kyle had a chance to sit down with not only him, but oh my God.
And we're showing age. Yes, we're showing age.
100%. Gigi Dall'Igna. So he had a chance to sit down with both of those guys while they were at COTA, and Kyle was very surprised about what they had to say. So anyway, I guess that's the standing question, Jason, for you is, what do you think about the effort that Ducati's putting into the effort in World Superbike? Because, they're spending a lot of money and they're out to get Kawasaki. And while the getting's good, meaning like the rules are still in their favor because they built a bike that works in the rules, I think it's a good move myself. And I just like seeing the shift in resources from Ducati Corsa, which, is not a huge company. That's an autonomous business unit that works inside of Ducati. So they have people to answer to as well. They don't have unlimited funds to throw at anything. They've got to figure out how to budget, keep the MotoGP effort going strong, and then throw this money at the World Superbike deal.
Greg, what are we into it? We're into 11 races, I believe, has been ran in World Superbike so far, 11 races themselves. And he's won every one of them. I think the only one they didn't run was the Superpole race at Aragon or was it Assen? Assen got snowed out.
Yeah.
Basically, it on Saturday, they didn't ride at all. So they just did 2 of the long distance runs on Sunday. Like, let's be fair. I have to say it because I thought after round 1, I'm like, everybody needs to chill out. Like, okay, he's going to go dominate round 2. I called that one because it's Thailand, and I kind of figured. And then we went to round 3 at Aragon, and I kind of said, look, another long, big straightaway, this and that. Assen comes, and he rode amazing. Bike looked amazing. I don't see a pitfall. I don't see. And in Imola, everybody says, oh, it's a scratcher's track. It is. It's one of those tracks where by scratcher's track, we talk about it in the sense that it's a place where you're going to see some battles. But the level that it looks like has to be ridden to keep up with Bautista is something that isn't sustainable over race distance. Yeah, you could do it for 3-4 laps. You can interrupt him a little bit, but as the race goes on, if he shows any patience, he's going to be able to take advantage of his experience and how good his bike is and so on and so forth. So I don't see him losing this championship now. I don't see, even if Johnny Ray goes on a run, it's very hard for me to think that Bautista can't finish at least second or third in every round. I think barring the bike breaking 6 times or something and he gets no points, or he tips off, like just starts turning into the person that we haven't even seen a resemblance of so far, I don't see how anybody's going to win the championship or a race if he's finishing races. It's going to be very, very difficult. And that's why we're hearing all the rumblings out of Europe of a new Yamaha, a new Kawasaki, everything new Honda coming out, because now everybody is building bikes to try to come and take down the Ducati. And I think Ducati, didn't we hear this year a lot about the trifecta, how Ducati's going to win British Superbike with Redding, it's going to win MotoGP with Dovi, it's going to win World Superbike with Bautista. I definitely think one of those is well on its way to happening now, and it's going to be difficult for anybody to catch him.
And as a side note, there was an article I read on gp1.com that mentioned this that I hadn't even thought about before, but it's the Ricky Carmichael syndrome. So Bautista's won 11 races. That's 11 bonus checks, dude. And I was like, ooh, he's got to be taking a chunk out of Ducati. And what they said in the article was that it's the Aruba.it team, and Aruba is actually responsible for half of the bonus that Bautista gets. So what Paolo Ciabatti said in that interview was that he's killing them, but they have a smile on their face. And I mean, you can imagine how much Bautista has racked in bonuses that he hasn't seen in how many years, So there's not just the money they're spending on his salary, not just the money that they're spending on the actual effort, the team, the development, but there's also big checks being written for bonus money. I mean, the article said that they estimate around 200 grand so far. I have no idea. You and I both know, coming from our paddock, that the win bonuses can be hugely different, from 50,000, 70,000 a win only to, a couple grand for a win. So who knows what Bautista's being paid, but very interesting points made all across the board, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. But, getting back to the topic, BSB, great championship, round 2 coming up, Alton Park, May 4th through the 6th. It'll be interesting to see how it's going to be fun to watch that season. And like I said, we always end up getting these new guys. And I think that if you look at Josh Elliott, I think even Whittam said something about if it rains somewhere, he kind of thought that Elliott would be a guy that could possibly win a race. Well, he's done it. He hasn't seen the checkered flag first per se. He did get a win though, and he got a second to back that up. So yeah, good on him for that, and roll on to the next round for those guys.
All right, Jay, with that, then it's time for most of our quick shift segment. It's sponsored by ARAI, Jason, and for 3 generations, ARAI has been making some of the world's best helmets. And of course, ARAI helmets meet all safety standards, but they also pride themselves in a blend of engineering, tech, and human craftsmanship that makes an ARAI helmet fit better and feel better. It's riding season, people. Time to do yourself a favor. Get rid of that old helmet. With ARAI and the way they develop these helmets, they protect you better and fit you better. Your head's worth the best. ARAIAmericas.com. For more information on tech, fit, and paint jobs, ARAIAmericas.com. You owe it to you. All right, so the idea behind Quick Shift, as we haven't done it in a couple of weeks, is I'm just going to bring up a topic, Jason, and then we'll rattle it on for about 60 seconds. And then the theory is that means stop talking, but we'll keep talking. So the first thing that I saw that you and I actually thought about completely without talking is that in the All Japan Road Race Series, Takumi Nakahashi won both races at Suzuka, both by nearly 17 seconds each. And he did it on a Honda CBR 1000 RR SP2. Jason, why is Honda so good in Japan? Go.
You gonna put that on me?
Yes.
You're gonna put that on me. Well, Suzuka, first off, is the test track for Honda, but you can't even say that because Hondas have really been nowhere. But we did bring up the fact that Irwin and Xavi Forres both were in the top 10 in a very competitive BSB championship as well. So I have no understanding. I think the bigger question is, we see Hondas competitive in Japan. We see them competitive in Australia. We see them competitive in England. Why are they not competitive in World Superbike? And you got to think it has something to do with rules packages and things. Greg, I'm not that up to date on what the All Japanese Series does now as far as their rules package, but it has to have something to do with that. I have said that the Honda, to me, bone stock, I really like the motorcycle. I think it does everything really. What's that?
As do I. I love that bike stock.
Yeah, and I think it's a good bike. It does everything really well. And I just think that with whatever the differences are in rules packages from series to series, that we just haven't seen the bike at the front in World Superbike. And I really rate Leon Camier, by the way. I really, really do. I think that he's an incredible talent and a great rider who just hasn't been on the right bikes the last few years. Obviously, now he's with the Honda, but I don't know, Greg. It's a hard one for me to answer of why. I wish I could give you the knowledge and say this is it, but it's got to be down to the rules, don't you think?
I think you're absolutely right. It has to be. I also think that on the World Superbike side, not to say that Milwaukee is not trying to develop this bike into a World Superbike race-winning motorcycle, but there are just such strong rumors that I'm hearing from so many different sides, whether it's across the pond or here in the States or, over in Japan, some contacts I have over there. It's just Honda's got a new 1000 coming out. It's a ripper of a bike. It's going to have tremendous amounts of horsepower stock and be modifiable to World Superbike rules. So I do hear it's not a V4. There was a big rumor about a V4, blah, 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 blah. It's not that. So I hope that they retain Leon in World Superbike because I do believe he is just an incredible and amazing talent. And I think he would be
kind of deserves it too. Don't you think he kind of deserves it?
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. So I think it'll be good. I think it does have to do with rules. And also I think it just has to do with maybe the caliber of rider too, or not just the caliber of rider, but the mix of crew, rider, and rules all in one, because it is just one big effort. You can't say speed is developed by, like one single thing, say rules or the bike.
On a closing note, don't you think it's kind of weird that on a weekend where there really wasn't any racing, that you and I both saw the all Japanese series just kind of popping up all over the place? Like maybe the fact that, Honda is winning over there, and I don't know, it just kind of found it odd. Maybe they're testing some new stuff. All right, well, the MotoE World Cup is back on. We got word today that the first test will be a 3-day affair, June 17th through the 19th in Valencia. Much of the materials for the series, as you remember, Greg, were destroyed in the fire at Jerez. And Energica says that they will have it all built up in 3 months. What do you think?
That's pretty incredible. So, because it was not only motorcycles that burned down, it was like the charging stations and all that kind of stuff. I have hope for the MotoE World Cup. I think it's a good thing that MotoGP is involved. So, fingers crossed. I mean, there's some smart people behind it, Jay, I guess, So, I still have concerns about why the fire occurred. I've been getting press releases, but sometimes I get busy and kind of skim over them. So if I miss something, which was they're determining what the reason was for the fire, which they've got to figure out what the reason is in order for them to be able to either fix it or not do it again. But I haven't seen that. So hopefully all that gets sorted out. And I just want to see how the fans react to it. I don't know if you've seen, like, there's a new Audi commercial for their new car. And they're in Monaco with this new, like, I think it's called the e-tron or something. It's their electric SUV vehicle, and they're bombing around the streets and everything else. And it's like Silent Fury or something like that.
Wow, really? Yeah.
It's kind of like the ad line. And I was kind of thinking to myself, like, yeah, I wonder if the MotoGP fans are going to get into it. As well as I do, being support races for MotoGP, that sometimes the fans can completely tune out if you're the support series.
But the reason, the reason why fans are going to stay in their seats and watch it is because what, G-Dub? What is it? It's the guys they got in the series. It's the guys they have
and
in
the gals, the guys and gals, exactly.
Yeah,
they want to see.
They got Maria Herrera as well. Yeah, so I mean,
and Bradley,
Bradley, Sete Gibernau. I mean, you go down the list. There's like all these guys that people are curious. That's what piqued my interest. I want to see how everybody does in this thing, and I can't imagine how much money it's cost. I don't know if there was insurance that could have helped pay and get some of this stuff back on the road, but it seems pretty quick that they got it all back together. And in a month from now, I guess it's a little over a month now, 6 weeks from now, they'll be back on track and testing and up and ready to go.
Jay, before we get into the race calendar, 24 hour of Le Mans happened over the weekend. And did you get to see any of the results or anything? I know that's a race you've been in. Obviously, you've won 2 world championships in FIM World Endurance. So, looked pretty good. I saw Melissa, they qualified like 52nd or something and worked their way up into the top 30, I think.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that one of the girls, they fell off, and so put them back, and as it does in that racing. I mean, it's just such a gnarly race because
Honda
so much can happen over 24 hours. The good thing is they had great weather. They had really good weather this year, so they didn't get the really frigid, cold temperatures. I know when Melly went there 2 weeks ago for the pre-Le Mans test, it was absolutely miserably cold and wet and raining, but I would have rather endured it during that time than during the race. But yeah, Kawasaki has just kind of become the new dominant force in the 24-hour stuff over there. I know that Yamaha sticks their nose in there and gets a couple here and there, but Yart went out early. Suzuki finished second. Honda finished second. Sorry,
Yeah, Honda. Yeah,
yep. Honda finished second, and then Suzuki third. One of my teammates when I was riding for Mako, Greg Black, he rides for Team Suzuki now over there, so he's been there for a couple of years. But there's so many stories that you can be told of that. And if you're a fan of racing, if it's like a bucket list to get to a MotoGP, and it's a bucket list to get to like the Isle of Man or somewhere like that, G-Dub, I think it needs to be on everybody's list. You got to go to the Le Mans 24-hour one time. It will blow you away, and it'll give you a different perspective of the series that goes on with really pretty much nobody here in America even follows it at all. It's gotten so big over there. They just signed a 10-year agreement for TV rights and all that stuff. It's gotten so big. I wish it had been like that when I was racing over there. I wish it would have been as big. But now we're going to get a lot more attention paid to it. They go to Slovakia. They go to Germany. They go to Suzuka. It's an incredible race, and you should go check it out. Even you, G-Dub, should go over there just 1 year and go check it out.
one of the biggest I went to was Spa. And I think it was an endurance race. We were racing I was racing the BMW Boxer Cup during that time, and we were there for 4 days, and the crowd was incredible. I mean, they were just so into it, and everybody just bombing around and staying. And even during the BMW Boxer Cup race, the stands were completely packed. And at Spa, when you're in the back row like I was, or one of the back rows, I wasn't on the very back row, all right, recognize. But when you start down a hill, so your grid position is on a slight downhill, and you're right, the grandstands are off to your left, and people were, they were so close, you could hear conversations happening, and I had earplugs in. The fans were just incredible. And that was after days of them being there. And it was so electric, and it was really cool. Rumor has it, though, by the way.
Yes.
I knew you were. As soon as I heard you take a breath, I was like, MotoGP might be back to Spa.
Can you imagine?
Man.
Hey, I talked to Wayne. I think I said it in the podcast last week. I talked to Wayne for an hour plus. I feel so lucky to be able to do that. But I asked him, I said, Wayne, I want to know your favorite track. Like where, and he's sitting there and he's thinking about it. And he goes, well, he likes Suzuka, which I'm like, it was so relatable to me because I've raced there so many times. I love it too. But then he said Spa, and I'm like, there's one to take off the bucket list. But everybody keeps saying Phillip Island, and I'm happy that I've raced at Phillip Island. I've been there at least. But yeah,
raced a lap.
I think you're so lucky. So lucky you got to do Spa, G-Dub.
Yeah, Spa is fantastic. It's and most of the time I did it, it was in the rain, and it had a lot of grip, and it was great. It's a lot to learn because it's a long track.
Yeah,
but I will say this about Spa, Jay, that was totally gnarly. So when you're getting towards the end of the lap, you kind of you go out in the woods, and you're off, and you kind of come back towards the stadium section, towards the paddock, and it's like you go in there, and it's probably, as I remembered, it's been a lot of years, but about 110 degree, maybe 100 degree right-hand corner, a little bit more than a 90.
Yeah.
And when you're on the brakes, you're braking towards that right-hand corner, and there's grandstands there, and you take the right, and that's where the grid is.
Okay.
There's a wall of dirt right in front of you. And like Spa's actually 3 public roads that all connect together. So they're closed. They close them down in the summer to make the racetrack, but they're owned by 3 different provinces from what I remember. But anyway, so you come in there on the brakes, and there's a white line painted on the road, like an outside line, like where it would define the lane.
Yeah.
And so what the organizers told us was, okay, if you cross the white line, you get a warning. If you cross the white line a second time, it was like a 5-second penalty if you cross the line. Like, so their whole idea to slow people down from not blowing it and really running straight into a dirt wall, a mountain really, was to just kind of slap people on the wrist and penalize them. And I thought, oof. So, like, I'm
might have to
thinking
change
about
that for might have to change that for
Oh.
MotoGP, huh?
Yeah, they're gonna have to do something unless it's been changed since I've been there, which is it's got to be probably maybe I don't even remember, maybe 13 years or something since I've been there.
So,
But I loved it. I would love to have gotten just like one full day of dry, to learn it and to just experience it. But nonetheless, it was a lot of fun. It was a good time.
It's good that you got to experience that. It's good.
All right, Jay. Well, let's get to our race calendar as we wrap this thing up. For those who want to go out and see some racing, and you should, Supercross is in New Jersey, just outside of New York City. Go check that out. American Flat Track is going to be at the Wild Horse Pass Motorsports Park in Chandler, Arizona. Got to go check that out. Cheer on Jared Mees and all the rest of the American Flat Track crew. AMA Enduro is in Forest Hill, Louisiana. NHRA Pro Stock Motorcycles in Charlotte, North Carolina. No MotoAmerica, no World Superbike, no MotoGP, but I have a feeling we're going to be back with more podcasts next week. What's your weekend got, Jason? What are you doing?
Man, I've got a couple invites to go do a couple things. Josh Hayes and Taylor Knapp are going to be up at Willow riding the bikes from Phillip Island. They're having like a race up there. So they're going up there to look at a few things on those bikes. So I thought about maybe ripping up there. But, Greg, we haven't been home. I haven't been home for 3 weekends. And once we go to Virginia, that's going to start this crazy run for me where, it's VIR, then it's Buttonwillow, then I go to Chicago. And then before you know it, I don't have any weekends. So there's a part of me that thinks that it'd be a fun weekend to just be chilling at home. And I really want to keep letting my leg heal. And so I might stay close to home. I might rip out for a day, go hang out with Josh on like maybe Saturday or something.
I'm on an airplane tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to Dallas, then to Paris, Texas for an ASA archery tournament that I'm commentating. And you know me, dude, I love me some archery.
I know. My mom was watching Robin Hood last night, like from 1940s, and I thought of you. So, yeah.
You're so dumb.
Well, I'm just saying. It just made me think of you. The guys were... I thought I could see my guy Greg there shooting his bow. Like, it's really cute.
All right. Everybody have a great weekend. Until next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Everyone. See ya.